We kick off tonight's discussion with a look at the best way to end the war in Iran and to end it on terms that are favorable to America's interests. Iran has put forth a 10-point peace plan of its own, but that plan includes terms that have already been rejected by the U.S. Meanwhile, President Trump has said that his ultimate aim is to ensure that Iran does not acquire a nuclear bomb. But the first order of business is opening the Strait of Hormuz. But even these plans appear to be jeopardized by recent developments that have unfolded only 24 hours ago. So, Anirban, what is the best exit strategy for the United States?
Yeah, no, this is a very good question. From the fog of war, we are in a smog of peace, if you will. So what happened is that if you follow the reporting of people who are directly talking to Iranian officials, what I am hearing is that one of the reasons Iran was agreed to this particular ceasefire is when Trump openly committed that I will mention your 10-point plan, and I would say that we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis from which to negotiate. That gave Iran a pause, saying that, okay, we will see how this ceasefire goes, but our hands are always on the trigger. We don't believe this because twice while we were negotiating, we were being bombed, but because the president is saying this, we will go along with it. And then again, bombing started in Lebanon, and that was included in the peace deal. Then the administrations and Israel tried to kind of walk it away a little bit, but then the mediator from Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, came out and said, no, look, like that Lebanon deal was in. It was about all fronts. And that, yes, Strait of Hormuz would be opened, but it would be controlled by the Revolutionary Guard in a certain way, and they will give you coordinates and so on and so forth. So at this moment, to answer your question, what is the off-ramp to the war, is both sides declare victory. That's very, very good. Trump should think that we have won this war, but also follow on with the discussion that is happening, should happen today, right? Friday in Islamabad, and we will see where that negotiation goes. But I don't think US would be able to keep all its deals or demands, and Iran is also not going to keep all its demands. One of the major one that was dropped is that US bases should leave the Middle East. So a good negotiation is where no one kind of gets what they want, and that compromise, I am hopeful. This is what I'm going to say. I am cautiously hopeful that maybe Trump would see that I don't want this war, this thing to be scuttled again. I want a lasting peace, a non-aggression pact, if you will, where Iran is given some guarantees.
Well, it seems Iran is going to have to back away from that whole idea of removing all American troops from the Middle East. But you mentioned whether or not Lebanon was included, so I'd like to ask you, to what extent can either the U.S. or Iran control Hezbollah? I mean, it's a militia, and it's hell-bent on destroying Israel. So what's going to stop Hezbollah?
Well, if there is a non-aggression pact, right, then in that sense, then every party in the front has to abide by that non-aggression pact. That has to be somehow blessed by the Security Council. If that gets violated, then it is definitely it's Iran's fault or Hezbollah's fault. Hezbollah initially did not open the war front, but later on, out of ideological solidarity, right? So I think at the end of the day, these people are pragmatic. They are not kind of mad, crazy people that we like to portray. They're very well educated, very pragmatic in many ways, and they want to see a certain kind of resolution. But the Palestine would come up as a question here and there about this issue.
What do you think, Lisa?
Well, look, I think that the best and maybe a realistic landing zone for a peace deal would be, a verified, we're not going to get the uranium, I don't believe, but a verified halt to enrichment, letting the IAEA back in there to do inspections, and then maybe some sanctions tied to verifiable compliance, because Iran wants money, right, to recoup the costs of war. And so sanctions relief is a way to do that, tied to compliance. We've got to get that Strait of Hormuz open, a permanent free passage. This notion of, $1 a barrel as a toll, that's Iran's greatest leverage here. And then maybe, hopefully a wind down of proxy, like Hezbollah, Hamas hostilities, hopefully. The idea that the Washington Institute has laid out, that I heard David Haas talking about yesterday, is this, our leverage is to say to Iran, fine, we'll blockade the strait. Nobody will get in and out. Your oil won't get out, our oil won't get out, and that's a feasible, that's a sort of quiver in the arrow that we still have.
Yeah.
Not great, certainly. As I paid $4.40 a gallon of gas in Erie, Pennsylvania
It's painful.
this week.
Yeah. Sort of the weird thing is that the ceasefire, the quote unquote ceasefire that's in place now, almost concedes that Iran has legitimate control over the strait, right? As opposed to doing what Lisa mentioned of the U.S. simply taking control. What are your thoughts, Tara?
No, I think you make an outstanding point because, and it's a point that acknowledges the surprise of the United States that Iran has managed this as effectively as they have.
Yeah.
And that our NATO allies have sort of, okay, yes, this is, I don't know how to describe it accurately, but basically they've acceded to, yes, we need to support the U.S., but on the other hand, they've also sort of silently acceded to the fact that Iran has control of this, and we aren't exactly happy with either side, but they, without saying so, they tend to be showing a little more support to Iran and its control of the strait because, of course, they need the oil. And that has really given Iran much more leverage than certainly I think the United States expected.
Yeah.
So in managing this, if Iran continues to manage it well, it does make it much more difficult for the United States to get everything that it wants. And the U.S. has to acknowledge that.
Yeah, so Ben, so far we've been talking about negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, but Israel has a say in this also because it's Israel that is most threatened by Hezbollah. And we've seen these bombardments over the past 24 hours. What do you think will convince Israel? What's Israel's role here, do you think?
To convince them what?
Convince them to be part of whatever peace plan that's negotiated and to trust that Hezbollah will do whatever Hezbollah pledges to do.
They're not going to trust Hezbollah. They're a proxy of Iran, so there's a problem. There's an ongoing problem with that. They're funded. They're not just ideologically. They're not just in line with the thought of Iran. They are actually funded and armed by Iran.
Yeah, they're backed by
So
Iran.
it's one of those ongoing issues that they're going to have. In addition to that, you're going to the table from our side with Death to America as a policy. Not just a slogan, but an actual policy since 1979 of Iran. So it's one of those things like, yeah, let's compromise, but come over here to my side.
Yeah, so Anirban, thinking about the other parties further, China and Iran also play a role here. They've backed Iran. So how do you get China and, Russia on board when we know those are both, enemies to the U.S. and they don't want the U.S. to succeed? How does that happen?
Yeah, I think Russia and China clearly showed they vetoed the UN Security Council proposal to open the Strait of Hormuz, was raised by UAE and Bahrain. I think, there are reports about that China comes out as a winning as a winning power in this because China, first of all, has brokered a wonderful thing, right? I think 2 years ago, 2021, they brokered a peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And Saudi Arabia, after a long, long time, opened an embassy in Iran. So as a result, I would see China not intervening directly because they hold a lot of power, including huge tungsten reserves, which are required for the military industry. China would come out, and because, again, we are hearing that a lot of these oils are being paid in yuan, our cryptocurrency, which again gives China leverage. Russia controls 11% of the world oil through the Strait of Hormuz. It is about 20%. So total 30% of oil is under consideration. And China seems to be that person who's like, oh, okay, if my adversary is making a mistake, I'll just stay back and watch. That's the best posture
and let
to
them
have.
watch. Yeah. So we're actually out of time, Tara, but I do want to ask you this last question. So Lisa laid out some of the goals. If the U.S. doesn't press for more control over the enriched uranium, was this war really worth it?
Not to my way of thinking. The United States really backed itself into a corner pretty quickly in this war, didn't really leave itself a lot of negotiating power because it underestimated Iran, it underestimated our allies, and it underestimated, as Anirban has mentioned, the role that China would play or not play.
Yeah, just
there it
real
goes.
quick,
We have to stop there. I'm sorry.